We're starting today with Bear Pit, I'm calling it 2.0. Different platforms, different challenges, some thriving, some surviving. It's a different landscape, and I think that that they're going to be talking about some of those challenges and wins coming up. And first, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Karen Pugliese.
Yes, you did.
It's because I'm half Italian.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, one of the jokes is that if you listen to Canadaland, where I work now, Jesse Brown always mispronounces my name. I've never corrected him because I think it's funny. You got it right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this morning. So I'm going to call up our wonderful guests. The first is Jeff Algie. He is the CEO of Village Media, an award-winning online local news company serving 21 communities across Ontario. You can clap. I know it's the morning, but high energy. Send some love. Next, you want to send some love for Camille Dundas. She's the co-founder and editor-in-chief of BuyBlackSpot.com, the #1 Black Canadian online magazine, and they've won 3 National Ethnic Press Awards. Fantastic. And Jordan Tim, managing editor of The Logic, which provides in-depth reporting on Canadian business, technology, the organization's politics, and people driving the innovation economy. So thanks, everybody, for joining me this morning. So happy to be here. We are going to have a discussion, and then at the end, we're going to open up for about 20 minutes worth of questions. So, and you can just shout them out. So we're going to start out with the new normal of media. And the industry is in this constant state of disruption. It has been for years. You know, in broadcast where I came from, there was a cable company, or cable cutting. And we've had disruptions to the advertising model. Legacy media has not been doing well. And we've had all these startups move into that space. So we're going to get into a discussion of C-18, the Online News Act, and how that's having an impact. But before we do, I would just want to talk about what's been working for now for new media and startups. Do you want to go ahead?
You want to start with me?
Yeah, you're beside me. I'll just look at you. I'll just like do it with my eyes and send you guys stares.
You know, I have a bias, but we're doing pretty well. You know, we started with one community 10 years ago. We're in 21 cities now with about 150 staff and 90 journalists. The model's shifting, right? I mean, where people get their news, how they get their news has changed dramatically. And I think, you know, there's a few of us sitting here today that have examples of new models that can successfully meet the audience where they are and kind of when they want to engage with us. You know, along the way, Google and Facebook have been good partners in that ecosystem, at least for us, in terms of building reach awareness, building up recurring audience, which of course turns into our ability to monetize the business. But certainly, I think these new models are where it's at. I think we still all got lots of work to do to figure it out better and better, but I think it does keep getting better and better as these models mature.
Well, can I just ask you about, I mean, like you're doing local news,
Yep.
which is an underserved area. So that was probably strategic, trying to fill a gap, and then online. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I come from a small community, about 80,000 people. You know, we have a daily newspaper, we have a weekly newspaper, we have a local TV station, we have multiple local radio stations, but you could see over time the decline in investment in local journalism. And so we were going in kind of the opposite direction and you know, really saw how that would work. The audience would come. The more you'd invest in journalists, the more people would come to you on a more often basis. So, you know, it's a good new model. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to get a little bit about how that model works. So tell me about discoverability. Like, how do you move into a community or let people know that you're there?
Sure, it's great. So we have a playbook that kind of specifies how we launch a new community. So it talks about how we select a new community, you know, when that moment in time is, what the criteria that community has for us to enter it. And then we use a variety of tactics. So historically, one of our primary tactics for a new market launch would be to use Facebook. So we would pre-launch, build up Facebook following, introduce that we were coming, get some feedback from the community, survey the community via Facebook. When we launched, we would host events, take out billboards, meet the mayor, sit down with the Chamber of Commerce. But primarily, we would launch massive Facebook acquisition campaigns for whether it be following us on social or subscribing to a newsletter or just consuming content. And then we would launch Google campaigns, search campaigns, display campaigns. And we learned that if you kind of mix the right number of journalists in a community, so we're producing enough content, and I say content because it's not just original journalism, but it would be things like obituaries or more service journalism focused information like, is the school bus running today because there's a blizzard outside? So if you have that right mix of content and you use the right acquisition techniques for audience, that over time you build habit. And it's those habitual readers that our whole business is built upon. And we would call them basically a daily reader. And our whole goal and how we grow over the first couple of years of a new community launch is to build that pool of daily readers. And it's very then telling about the performance of the business in that community.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. Because I feel like sometimes the different content or the space that you're moving into almost needs a different strategy. So,
and I should just clarify for everyone, we are very different in the sense that we're not subscription-based at all. So we are fully reach-based, and our primary revenue is local advertising.
okay.
Just for
fantastic.
clarity.
Yeah, no, that's really important to know. So Camille, you've got a different business, a different audience. Tell me about moving into that space and launching.
Well, yeah, that's a big question. You could do the whole hour on that. In terms of what's working, though,
Yeah.
And then when I hear that question, I think about what's working in comparison to what, right? So if we're comparing to legacy media, I think what independent or smaller or local, et cetera, media platforms have proven is that people will pay for news and analysis that is relevant to them, as opposed to trying to kind of like, force the fire hose on people and wondering why like the subscription model is failing, like for legacy media, but for some independent media like Canada Land, for example, it's soaring. People will pay for news. Interestingly, at Buy Blacks, it's so different. Like, we're not doing news, we're not doing like local updates. We don't have the capacity to do that. But what we do have the capacity for is, and what I always coach the writers on is like, we're not telling people what happened, we're telling them why it happened and how this happened and what impact it has specifically on the Black community. And it's not necessarily always like, okay, what impact just specifically on Black people, but obviously Black people aren't just concerned with their community and what's happening in the community. They're interested in all types of things. But we always want to fill that gap of the analysis, like, why is this happening? And what context are you missing when you're, at the nail salon or in the hotel and looking on the screen and seeing the ticker? There's a lot of context behind that maybe legacy media actually doesn't have the capacity to dive into. Like, we're just feeding the 24-hour beast, right? And so a lot of that context I find is missed. And so that's what and I think a lot of other digital media focus on. I won't say backlash, but I'll say like it's been an experiment and it's been hit and miss. So while when I was still working in mainstream media, I was always like pushing us to like be like digital first, social first, right? Like, I used to work with Liz, and I remember always knocking on her door, being like, we need to do Facebook, we need to do Twitter, like we need to have this, we need to have this. I was always pushing social first, right? And I think, and that certainly worked for us, for our show at the time. It helped to grow the audience. And then I saw the rise of social first news platforms, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, this is great. Like, they have, you've seen people with like a million followers, but they have like no website, like no whatever, and it's just all on social. And, I'm in business with my husband, and so I was always telling him like, we need to do that. And he's like, no. we need to retain ownership over our content at the end of the day. And we need to, he's about the business, I'm about the editorial. So he's always like, we need, at the end of the day, if you're posting on social without pushing people back to the website, what is the point? And I was like, well, it's awareness, it's brand awareness, you know. And he was like, no, get people back to the website. And I raised that in the shadow of C18 because now it's all of those social first platforms are dead in the water without being able to publish on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, there's no monetization model. Basically.
No, and so now I'm grateful that we still have a website that we can at least still push people to and try to and say, okay, well, like focus on the newsletter or focus on, like video first on TikTok and everywhere else. But so it's been an interesting experiment basically in seeing how things have panned out. And it's a good lesson, I think, in never really putting all the eggs in that one basket, right?
I'm just going to ask you about that experimentation with newsletters. A lot of people are doing that. Why is there a shift to newsletters right now?
It feels so old school to me. It's so strange. Like I feel weird even like promoting it because I ignored it for so long, and I regret that I ignored it because, against my husband's advice, because I was like, whatever, who's reading a newsletter? Like, no one gives a shit about your newsletter. Stop. Like, everyone's going to go on Instagram and Twitter, and that's where they're getting it from, right?
Honestly, that's what I thought too.
And now I'm literally begging people to sign up to our newsletter because that's the, main way that we're going to be able to reach them. That's why I say experiment, because it's like we're just going, in a way, we move forward, we do things differently, but then we realize in some areas we have to go back. So it's really interesting.
So Jordan, what is working in the new normal for you?
What's working? Well, a lot of what Camille said resonates with me. The Logic has always put an emphasis on owning the relationship with its readers. For those of you who don't know The Logic or don't know it well, we were founded 5 years ago, and we cover business and technology. When we launched, we had a much tighter focus on Canadian tech. And as we've grown, our coverage has grown broader. We cover the energy transition, we cover EVs. We've just hired the best economics writer in the country, in my opinion. He starts Monday. Please subscribe. And that's something else that has always worked for us. The Logic is a subscription-driven site. We have a few different revenue streams, but what we're best known for is the fact that we were this uppity little website that launched 5 years ago and insisted that you were going to have to pay $400 a year to get behind a very hard paywall. We believe philosophically that journalism has value and that people need to learn to pay for it. People need to learn that it's worth paying for. And there are a lot of days where that has made our lives more difficult. But the emphasis for us has always been on doing journalism that's unique, that people can't get anywhere else, that has value, asking them to pay for it, and owning the relationship with that community of subscribers with as little intermediation from platforms as possible.
Okay. And Camille, you have a hard paywall as well.
No.
Oh, you're more like Canadaland with an optional?
Nope. Oh, we don't. Our business model is entirely it's ad revenue based.
Totally ad revenue.
So we've never even tried to pitch to our community to subscribe. We've never even tried it because we know how difficult it is. We know, like, I think this sums it up. I'll even say 98% of our advertisers on Buy Blacks are not Black. We don't have Black businesses that can afford to advertise on our website. All of our advertisers are corporate businesses that would like to reach the Black community. And so, yeah, it's a tricky, it's not the most solid, I guess, business plan because when those advertisers or when there's an economic downturn like we are now, you're kind of at their mercy, right? And when there's C18 where now your traffic is affected, now you don't have the bags of gold to bring to them, which is eyes, right? And clicks. You don't have that anymore, or it's a lot reduced. So it's certainly had us experience like a true entrepreneurial startup where it's like it's up, it's down, and when it's down, it's really freaking down. So yeah, it's tough. Yeah, but you know, we're in our 11th year, so we're still trucking. So.
Okay. Before we go on and start talking about the Online News Act, I do want to talk a little bit about recruiting new talent. And Jordan, you'd mentioned a new hire, so maybe I'll start with you. How is it going recruiting new talent in? I guess I'm going to call it the new normal as well. Like on one hand, we're seeing a lot of layoffs, so there should be a lot of people out there, but I'm not certain that they're not all going into communications.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start on a positive note. Every day it gets easier, right? Because every day people like Camille and Jeff are out there building fantastic news organizations, journalism organizations, raising the profile of the entire journalism startup community. And the longer we go, and the more we demonstrate to people, to emerging journalists, mid-career journalists, veteran journalists, that these are viable businesses, they do good work, they're stable, they pay pretty well, and if you want to be a journalist, if you want that to be like your career, it's a pretty good gig. There's still a stigma. There are a lot of people who, maybe some of you in this room, who work for a news organization that's been around for 50, 80, 100 years and think, well, I got it pretty good. The biggest challenge for recruiting talent for us has been convincing people that we can give you the opportunity to do journalism that's going to move the needle, that you're going to be proud of. We're going to give you the resources you need to do it. We're going to pay you a salary that you're going to be able to live on, and you're going to like your life. I think we're winning that conversation. And every time any of us publishes a great story, or recruits a fantastic new freelancer, or makes a new big name hire, I'd like to think the next conversation gets a little easier. But to your point, Karen, if I can continue, I have two big concerns as our businesses grow, right, and as we're out here hopefully expanding what's possible in Canadian media. I have a lot of worries about emerging journalists who decide that they'd rather emerge as something else, or the brilliant mid-career and veteran journalists who decide there's nothing left for me in this industry, and I'm going to take that comms job. And I guess if I can get on the soapbox for a minute, I don't know who's out there listening to this, but if you are one of those people who is beaten down by the layoffs, who is frustrated by what's happening in your C-suite or what your investors care about, and you're thinking about making that jump to the comms job, give one of us a call before you do, because we need you. We are rebuilding Canadian media, and we need your help.
That is so nice and so inspirational, because honestly, there's so much talk about, how the industry is dying. And there are new startups out there that are becoming viable. I'll just give a plug for Canadaland, 10th anniversary for Canadaland.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, thank you. And in terms of talent, I think Jesse Brown did pretty well in getting it. But it's also journalism schools are even shutting down, because I think the message is getting out there to young people that it's just not a viable business anymore. And yet we've got some examples up here of people that are growing and thriving.
And I'll just I hesitate to say this, because we are a journalism conference, but some of my best contributors have not gone to journalism school, and are not, official journalists. And once I identified my own bias when I was hiring, because I was hiring strictly from journalism programs. And I wasn't seeing success, to be honest. And then a friend of mine said, well, why don't you just put it on LinkedIn? I'm like, how gauche? Like, but I did. And I got like over 100 applicants, most of which were, not credible. But then I found 3 great writers that way. And I shifted my criteria, right? And in my mind, I said, okay, I want writers who have something to say, and the rest we can help you with. I have an editor, there's myself, I can coach you, and I love that part of it too. So maybe that's why, because I love kind of cultivating new talent and love seeing their growth, right? But there's something to be said for thinking differently about who gets to be a journalist.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the years that I spent at APTN, very few of the people we hired ever went to journalism school. And, sometimes because there's competition over the very few Indigenous people out there, I was literally ripping babes out of the arms of their moms and turning them into journalists, and they barely finished high school. So, cruel woman that I am doing that to people. Innocent children. So, Jeff, how about for you? How is recruiting going for you?
Well, sometimes good, sometimes bad. I mean, I think most of our recruits come from daily newspapers or weekly newspapers that have scaled back or shut down. So most of our journalists have come from there. I think the industry has hurt itself over the last 10 years that I've been in the business, because I think, to Jordan's point, and Camille's probably, we keep telling kids that this is not an industry to go into, that there's no jobs here, that you can't be successful here. And so the journalism schools have really, there's a lot fewer students coming out of them. And so when you start looking at the smaller communities that we tend to serve, there's not an abundance of journalists that are applying for these jobs. We've actually even decided not to launch new communities in a couple of cases because we can't find the right talent to service them. So it's tough, but to Jordan's point, it is getting easier and easier. As the profile of businesses like ours, all of ours, grows, then people take it more seriously. We used to get asked as early as 5-6 years ago by people in the industry if we actually paid our journalists. They thought they were like taking free, blogs from random people in basements, I suppose. So, and we pay competitively and very competitively. So I think that is shifting, but now we have this issue of there's not enough people going to journalism school, because we have some really great editors who've been around for ages, and then we have some young people that have just come out of journalism school that are doing incredible work. They're working really, really hard, and I think the mix is awesome. Just need more of them.
Yeah. I just want to pick up on something that Camille said earlier and throw it out to anybody who wants to answer, but it's on this recruitment of talent, and you'd said, I'm the editorial, damn it. Let somebody else handle the business. I don't know, I used to cherish the fact that I could be just editorial. And I don't know that that's really true anymore as you're going into the business. I don't know if schools are really preparing people for both, but to what extent in recruiting does it matter that you're hiring somebody who also understands the business of a startup or the business of journalism?
We wouldn't want that, but we're at a size now where it's not maybe necessary. We'd prefer they be focused on journalism than be worried about everything else related to the business, because there are people around to handle that. So I think it depends on what part of the industry you're looking at. I think the business of being an entrepreneur and understanding digital and sales, et cetera, and also being a great journalist, it's a tough mix to find, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but they're distinct skills. It would be suggesting that I should be a great journalist too. It just wouldn't work out that well. So I don't know. I mean, I think we have to be careful. I think journalism schools should focus on journalism. I think if there's understanding of maybe the analytics around the business, understanding audience, for example, might go a long way. But there's so many pieces to making it a business that I think it's tough to expect one person to understand all those things.
And what about things like, understanding brand, personal media, behavior in public spaces online, as well as metrics and clicks? And I always feel this love and hate of being in a business that's become so obsessed with audience reach, because I feel like on one hand, nobody's going to tell anybody to eat their broccoli anymore. It's all going to be candy. But what do you guys think? Are those skills, is that thoughtfulness necessary, or can you stay purely editorial?
Yeah, I agree with what Jeff is saying. It is really hard to even expect. I find it really tricky as a business owner, as well as the editor-in-chief. My instinct is to have this sort of, democratic, open air system where I show them all, like at our editorial meetings, I'll show them like all the clicks, I'll show them the Google Analytics, I'll tell them like what challenges we're facing right now. We made an editorial shift in September simply based on declining revenue. And I was very transparent about that. I did a 3-month pause on all articles. Like I was transparent with them on why. But it's a tricky move as a business owner, because once you do that, then you also have to realize you're going to get a lot of opinions back. Right? And then suddenly you're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't think I wanted all of these opinions. And so you can't cherry pick, right? So once you open the door, then you have to be ready for anyone who you've ever hired to have an opinion on how you do business, which, ideally sounds good, right? Like collective, decision making. But, when you have writers who are like, well, no, like I don't agree with this and you should do this and da da da. And you're like, yeah, but here's the evidence. Like here's what people are clicking on. And so we have to move away from those things, even though we love doing those things, but people aren't clicking on that. And then I get you too, because it's the same thing about like, okay, you got to tell people to read this stuff, but year after year we're seeing it's not performing. So I do find it very tricky. Of course, my husband, again, being the business guy, the other day I said to him, like our assistant editor, we have a process where we have a graphics person, again, who's freelance. So in my mind, every time I see a request go to the graphics person, I'm like, okay, that's this much, that much, like the bill is racking up, right? So in the instructions, I tell the assistant editor, find a stock image first, or go to the writer and have the writer to give you a photo before, basically the graphics person is the last resort, because I have to pay her every time you do a request. And she has not been following that protocol, right? And so I was complaining to my husband. He's like, she doesn't care and she doesn't need to. She's just going to do what makes her job easiest. And you can't, as a business owner, you can't expect people to be concerned about your business, about your bottom line, as long as they're getting paid and they're doing their job efficiently. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It is. But you have to realize, like, again, like Jeff is saying, it's unrealistic to have those demands. You either want a quality writer, a quality editor, or do you want a business person? Do you want, like, an auditor? Like, figure that out. So, tricky for me.
You want to jump in?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I admire your commitment to transparency. No, we try to do the same thing. So I think in media over the years, a lot of us have developed a Pavlovian response to the words town hall. Yeah, right? I felt the chill in the room just as I said it. Nothing good happens at a town hall. We have quarterly town halls where, as a leadership team, we take every employee of the business through everything about the business. Everybody who works at the Logic knows how much money we have in the bank. We're still in startup mode, so we're still burning money every month. They know what our burn rate is. They know how much runway we have. They see all the numbers, so there are no surprises. And it's something that started when we were a very small team. It's continued as we've grown. Everybody who works at the Logic has equity options in the business, and what we've tried to do is to empower people to think like owners. and to have that filter down to the decisions they make about spending on a day-to-day basis. You've got an interview to do downtown. Do you take an Uber or do you take the subway? What else do you have to do that day? Is it good for you? Is it going to be a better decision to take the Uber than to take the subway? Think about it like an owner, right? If it's gonna make a difference, if it's gonna make your day easier, if it's gonna mean that you have a more productive day, whatever, great, take the Uber. We actually are a little less transparent though about analytics, and it's funny because I came up in newsrooms where we had the Chartbeat screens everywhere, and Chartbeat was God, and you would post a story and you'd feel that anticipation, right? And you'd see it start flying up the charts. That can be healthy, it can be unhealthy. But the analytics that we look for to measure journalism success and business success are just very different at this point than page views. We're interested in, we do very little on social media. Our social media is email. When we publish a story, all of our subscribers get an email about that story. And if you're not a subscriber, but if you've shown an interest in the Logic's content in the past, we know, for example, that you're interested in stories about Shopify, or we know that you're interested in stories about electric vehicles. So when we publish a news story about electric vehicles, you're going to get an email. And it's going to say, hey, here's this story, first 2 paragraphs, here's a deal to subscribe. It usually takes multiple instances of connecting with a prospective new reader before they convert into a subscriber. So it's not really useful for us to tell our journalists, hey, 10 people subscribed based on this story. It's a much more complicated relationship with that. So I guess there's a little bit less transparency on that front.
Okay, so I'm going to switch gears now, and we're going to talk about the Online News Act, because I guess we have to. The thing that just won't go away. I'm just going to throw out a general question about how it's impacting media. Just go for it.
Go for it. Let her rip.
Go for it.
Well, I'll start by saying I hate it. Let's start there.
Yeah, I mean,
Not a fan.
just raise your hand if you love the Online News Act. Anybody? Yeah. I don't know. You can talk feel free to talk about what you don't like about it, or if because there's a fallout of it as well. But
yeah, I won't get into the weeds of my kind of personal views of it. I mean, I just think it was a bad bill to start. Anyways, I think from an impact standpoint, what we're seeing, so for Village, our owned and operated properties, about 17% of our total traffic came from Facebook. Very little from Instagram, so that would wrap up Instagram. That is, of course, gone. It doesn't mean our traffic has dropped 17% because people will reroute. They'll come more often, those that are avids. So we see that. So we haven't seen a net 17% loss. We've also done other things to overcome that loss. We've been more aggressive with bringing back certain elements of commenting on platform, just approaching things a little differently. What we do see is in our range of markets, so there's 21 cities, some of them are really mature, profitable, large audience markets, and some of them we've launched in the last year or so, is that every market, in my opinion, at least we're talking small communities, 10,000 to 150, 200,000 people, every market now has a winner. Most of the ones we're in, we're a winner because we've been there long enough. We've amassed large audiences that have built habit, that seek us out. But our competitors, like our independent competitors in those markets, are wiped off the face of the planet. And
because social media was such a important.
Because for a new publisher, so for our new markets, and this has changed over the last couple of years because we anticipated this would happen, so we moved much more to newsletter strategy and other things, push, PWAs, you name it. But new publishers, in the way we used to behave, upwards of 50% of your traffic could come from Facebook. And so if all of a sudden you eliminate that, to me, because then the secondary benefits are gone as well. You would see channel preferences or behavior shift over time where you would introduce someone to your product, your content, journalism, through Facebook, and then they would eventually subscribe to a newsletter, or eventually bookmark you, etc. That is gone now as well, right? So if you're a startup publisher, and we've actually paused launching new communities as of about May, and we have not done that for years. We're usually launching 4 or 5 new markets a year.
And is that specifically because of what's happening?
Because of this act, 100%. Because the whole the mechanics of launching a new publication, to me, are now temporarily broken until that's figured out. The other thing that we see, though, is that, and I think this is where this becomes a bad for society, bad for democracy issue, is that a lot of people that would passively follow us on Facebook, you know, they're not avid news readers. They won't seek out news. They don't choose to make themselves informed about what's going on in their community, what's going on around the world, etc. But that passive exposure was important because over time they would click a story here or there and they would learn from it. So we're seeing a drop in user accounts, a lift in sessions per user over the course of a month, because it's the more avids that they're finding us and coming. But man, there's so many people now that just have no exposure to news on that historically got it from Facebook. I think it's terrible.
The main impact for us is in with our advertisers. A big part of of many of our sales packages was social media promo. So let's say, you know, Sheraton Hotel takes out an ad package with us that will include banner ads, pop-ups, etc., but also include 3 Instagram posts or something like that. Now we can't offer that, and you know, it's not as attractive to them. What's interesting, jumping off, Jeff, what you were saying about really peeling back the onion there on who's who on social media, in that I was so attached to Instagram because like our highest engagement happened on Instagram. Right. In terms of when you look at the number of engagements on a piece and the comments, right? So we gauge engagement via comments, and that's where all of our activity happened. And so I was really panicking once we lost Instagram, because I'm like, well, you know, what do we do now? But now that I look at the numbers, I don't think that the people making all those comments and doing all those engagements were actually reading the articles. When I look at like the clicks of like our link in bio, etc., that's not actually where the clicks were coming from. So it's very interesting to me that, you know, I thought my instinct told me that one thing, but then the numbers tell you a different thing. I still am getting a lot of DMs on Instagram of people being like, I can't see your profile anymore, or I haven't heard from you in a while, so I went to your page and I can't, do you know about this? And I'm like, yeah, we know. So, and then I'll send them the link to the newsletter, right? But even that has been blocked because the sign up for the newsletter is on our website. If you send someone that link, it's categorized as news, and so I can't even DM people the link to our newsletter.
You can pay for it still. You can pay Facebook to drive people to that.
Right, and then we tried that, and then what we found interestingly is that paid sponsored posts do not always and rarely actually get the same engagement as organic posts. There's some magic that happens, you know, when there's or organic conversation around a piece of content that sponsored posts just don't produce. So I did it a couple times, and then I've just left it, and we're just gonna. Now, the point I wanted to make was in terms of diversifying your traffic, and so. Roger, my husband, has come up with, and he's been doing this for quite a while, but doubling down on it more now. What other ways, besides our articles, what other ways can we get people to the website? And so he has 2 kind of marquee events, campaigns that he does throughout the year. He does Buy Black's Restaurant Week, which is in spring and fall. And we see a surge of traffic on the website during that time because he'll do a whole publicity campaign around it. We'll be on CP24, on CTV, talking about the campaign. And so people will go to the website. And then when we have what's also called the People's Choice Awards, where people come and like vote for their favorite bakery, favorite whatever, we see a surge of traffic to the website then. So he's just sat as the business person, not the editorial person. He thinks of ways like how else. Now we're thinking about during COVID, pre-COVID, we were thinking about doing events like a music festival and this. And then during COVID, we're like, okay, well, that's not going to work. But now we're back and now thinking about, okay, like what else can you have on your website? And it feels a little slimy to me because, you know, I'm like, well, it should be the articles like that. You know, we're in journalism. But if you kind of have to accept, you have to find other ways to bring people to your website.
And Jordan, I'm going to ask you to speak, but I just want to say we're going to open up for questions right after this. So get your thinking caps on for your questions.
Yeah, thank you. I've warned Karen and Jeff and Camille that I need to be careful what I say here because perhaps a little more than them. The Logic is pretty actively engaged in covering C18 specifically, as well as this federal government and the companies Alphabet and Meta. I want to stress here as well that on C18 and files like that, we have pretty rigorous rules that separate our newsroom and our editorial activities from our business operations. Some of you in this room may have seen the Logic CEO, David Skok, expressing his opinions about C18. If you have, I just want to stress that those are David's opinions as CEO and publisher, and they don't reflect any particular bias on the part of the newsroom, and they don't reflect my personal thoughts about C18, which we're not going to talk about today. For us, C18, the impact has been negligible day to day. Because from the outset, we have, as I said earlier, we've emphasized an effort to own the relationship with our readers, our subscribers, and our potential subscribers with as little mediation as possible. We haven't relied on Facebook or Google in the same way that some of our friends in the industry have to acquire new subscribers. That has meant at times that our growth has been slower, probably, than our friends elsewhere in the industry, but we're fortunate in that we have patient investors, and we've always seen this as a gradual growth business. One impact that the fight around C18 has had that may make an impact on us is a number of our competitors had signed deals with Google and Facebook that saw undisclosed, but we can assume substantial amounts of money flowing into those newsrooms. The Logic has never signed one of those deals. And what that meant is that the Globe and Mail, for example, who we consider our number one competitor, they probably don't think of us that way. That's fine. Don't tell them.
I'm glad they'll never hear this.
Let's just, they can continue to sleep on that. But not only are we competing now against the deep pockets of the Thompson family, but we're competing against subsidies from big tech. And that has meant that, one impact that had was suddenly we found ourselves in a position where we were having to fend off a concerted recruiting effort from the Globe and Mail, where they tried to hire a number of our journalists, and we fended them off successfully. But it has had an interesting impact on the playing field, those deals. I guess the other thing I would say about C18, and I might sound like a bit of a jerk saying this, and if I do, I apologize, because I don't mean to diminish the acute challenges and real pains that C18 has created in newsrooms large and small across the country. Not at all. But I think C18 is a little bit of a phony war because Facebook at a corporate level has been pulling back from news for years. Fine, whatever. If you haven't read Ben Smith's book Traffic, a lot of people have criticized it. It has its issues, but it has been a good reminder of the challenges that come along with building a business on the back of a very mercurial platform. The Google thing, as we talk about C18, and it's an urgent conversation for a lot of us, I appreciate that. I think we need to bear in mind that the fundamental experience of search on the internet is, I really believe, on the verge of changing completely because of generative AI. And I think that the conversations that we're going to have as an industry around generative AI and its impact on discoverability and how people get information and how people find our work and how that work is used by platforms, I think that may be a conversation that represents an even more profound challenge to what we do, and it's coming fast.
Can I just ask, is that because search is, instead of bringing up a link, is bringing up a description? Is that where you...
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the productization of this technology is in its infancy. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that.
Tech bro.
Yeah, I spent too much time talking about
language
tech.
is that
Cut
from
that,
a journalist?
please, if we could edit that.
Big words, shame on you.
Yeah. And it's funny because we're always telling our reporters, don't write stuff like that.
Fourth grade.
Yeah. No, but we don't know yet exactly how this is going to look as generative AI gets more deeply embedded in our internet experiences, right? But if I can just say, hey Google, what's going on in Sault Ste. Marie today? And it says, well, Jordan, here are 5 things you need to know. And it has scraped that from Jeff's site and other sites. And it's not feeding anybody to Jeff's site. And maybe the information contained in that summary is or isn't accurate, who knows. But it's severing what links exist, potentially, already between the reader using the search engine and the source of the information. So it's an interesting conversation we're going to move to very quickly.
Thanks for explaining that
not,
so eloquently.
Not trying to minimize, again, I want to stress this, the pain and the frustration that people are experiencing dealing with the impacts of C18. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, so let's see if we've got any questions from the audience. Yeah, right here.
My question is to all of you, but Camille, you said something really interesting before about how when you started looking in terms of recruiting, that you're not necessarily looking for a J-School grad. And there are a lot of students in here who would be really interested in what are the skills you're looking for. And before there's a recruiting and retention session coming up at noon that you might be interested in attending. But I'd be interested in knowing what kind of skills you are really looking for when you're looking for people.
Yeah, apart from, basic writing skills, I'm looking for passion. I'm looking for you have something to say about something. I'm looking for curiosity. I'm looking for tell me about a story that I haven't heard before. It's still all the things that we were taught in J school, right? But there's a lot that was missing from my J school experience, anyway, that's what I'm drawing on, that has led me to feel like I don't need to have a J school graduate. I want someone who is embedded in their community, who knows what's happening within their 6 blocks, right? First and foremost, that's because I can't be everywhere. And so I'm going to miss a lot of things. And so I'm depending on you as a writer to pitch me stories that I have not heard about, or pitch them to me in a way that makes me say, I did not think about that before. I hadn't seen it that way, because that's going to turn a light bulb on in our readers' heads as well. So that's really what I'm looking for, is and so many of them are deeply afraid of that. And so I love coaching them to own their perspective. They're deeply afraid they're like, well, I can't give my opinion on that. I'm like, yeah, you can. Tell the facts, but also analyze them. Tell me what you think about them. Tell me how you have experienced this. And yeah, I'm biased in a way because I know that that's what's going to get the most clicks. I know that our audience clicks on first-person narratives before they'll click on a newsy story. They want to know what was your experience with, how have you experienced this news? How has it impacted you, and how do you experience it? Because what people are desperate for is relatability, is particularly racialized people who live their entire lives gaslighted all the time, that no, this doesn't exist. No, that's not really that. You just, everything's fine. Everyone's nice. For you to see, that happened to you? Oh, wait, that happened to me too. And you experienced that way? Okay, so this is not all up in my head, right? The other thing that we're looking for is people who are interested in historical context. When you say the word history, you might think, okay, boring, like no one wants to read. We found when I did the Black History 365 campaign maybe 4 years ago, I decided to do a campaign where every single day I would post a story about Black Canadian history for a year. And every time when I panic thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of information, more information. And it's all on the internet. I didn't even have to step into a library or anywhere to get this information. It's all there, but yet so hidden. And so that was still to this day, the most successful campaign, like social media campaign, editorial campaign we've ever done. And it made me realize how desperate people are, Black Canadians specifically, are to see their own history reflected, because it has been glossed over or hidden for so many years. It's also, though, what got us a bunch of awards too, because it went beyond our community. A lot of other people outside of the Black community are also interested in this. And so it was now like crossover-ish, right? And it really actually, that helped us to cross over into other communities apart from our own. So
I know there's another hand up. So I'm going to do something a little controversial. There's 2 hands up, and we've only got a few minutes left. So if I could get you to ask your question, and if I could get you to ask your question, then I'll just let you guys jump in on which question you want to answer, if that sounds all right.
That's fine. Hello. I am a very proud broadcast journalism, multi-journalism teacher,
Yes.
television news professor at Fanshawe College.
Yes.
Worked in legacy media, many different things for over a number of decades. And I love what you guys are doing. Love, love, love what you guys are doing. And I'm very happy to say that we are training our students to work for you as well as we are for the legacy media and everybody else, because I'd rather that they don't cross into the dark side. I have actually avoided that in my career, which I've been very happy about. But so I wanted to say that our students, we train them as storytellers. We talk to them about the fact that they may not be working at a CTV or a CBC, that they may end up working for you guys and telling good stories. And that's really, and by the way, our enrollment has doubled this year. So, you know, and we just did a PAC meeting, and there's tons of jobs right across the country. We had participants from news leaders from right across the country, tons of jobs. I also wanted to say, so thank you for being here. I want to get all your cards. But how important is video? I'm the coordinator of the television news program, and everybody who does everything, they write, they do radio, they do television, and we absolutely, you know, have been told that everything that has a video is going to get more clicks, and people are going to be more interested. So everybody's learning to tell video stories. How important is that?
And just before you answer, I'm just going to ask the gentleman over here to shout out his question. Shout it? Yeah. Unless you can run over like real quick. Run, run, run. Run like the wind. Yay! Look at that. Somebody's been working out.
Good timing. So I have a sort of follow-up question, because we were talking about how journalists are now looking for passion, for writing, for looking for creativity and new stories and all that. And I was kind of wondering if journalism nowadays should focus more towards people that may not be interested in journalists but have a passion towards writing, over people that have strictly gone in towards journalism as a field or career.
Okay, so the questions are, how important is video, and passion versus a journalism degree? Although hopefully you can have both. Yeah. But what if you only have the passion?
Video is extremely important for us. When I made that editorial shift, I also shifted the budget to support more videos. So whereas we were promoting our stories just like with a caption and a link, just how we normally do, I killed that and hired a video journalist to promote the stories like first person narrative. So she's on camera. She didn't write the story, but she's talking about the story, like any TikTok video you would see. And that's the guidance I gave her, TikTok style, because that is what we have to go video first, because in the landscape of competition, you really cannot compete against video, because it is what, and I always tell them, what would you stop and scroll? What would you click when they write a headline, when they do a 1 minute video? I said, would you stop your scroll for that? So that's their guiding light. About the passion, I don't think, I don't mistake my comments for saying that I have completely disregarded journalistic integrity, because I don't think that we need to elevate one over the other. I certainly do think, and I commend you for the changes, the pivots that you have made in your program. I wish that I would have seen that consistently around other programs, because this is probably the reason that some of them are folding, because they have either made that pivot too late or simply refused to make that pivot. I think that the integrity that you learn in journalism school is absolutely crucial to the way you conduct yourself as a journalist. But I think it has also been limiting to marginalized communities, to racialized communities who do not see journalism as something, a career that they can aspire to, because that's a white people thing. That still happens a lot. I went to journalism school, it's almost 15, 20 years I've graduated, and I was one of 200 students, one black person in the entire graduating class at Carleton University. I don't think it's much better now, 20 years later.
We have a wonderful reflection of our community in our classes. We are absolutely caring for the community. We have lots of people of color, and it's from different backgrounds, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that I'm not going to discount one or the other, but before I used to completely, my bias was all on, real journalists. But I had to confront that bias first and then drop it. And I hope more of us are doing that, especially those of us in legacy media, because we have to widen that door, because we are missing out on so many great voices, on so many great stories when we don't widen that door.
Okay, so we're a little over, but please, Jeff and Jordan, if you want to just...
I would be curious to hear you speak about the importance of video in your business.
Okay, very quickly. Video for us, not highly important. Not unimportant, but I would say we've learned that from a monetization standpoint, so driving enough eyeballs and being able to drive revenue out of that, we can do much better with print-based articles, basically the equivalent. Where we find video super helpful is to help build brand and build community around us. So we run programs like random acts of kindness programs, things like that are really well received, and it's really hard to convey that kind of emotion not using video, so we love it for that. But the notion of, we've tested everything. We've had full newscasts, like full virtual sets we've constructed, and we've just learned that there's very specific ways that we use it where it is generally not to make money. It's for other purposes.
And Jordan?
I'll just maybe speak to the journalism thing. I think Camille made excellent points, and I obviously I'm a white guy, but I endorse them all. I would just say that one of the things that I fret about with the kind of the talent ecosystem is writing. And I know it's, like you got to be realistic about it. When I was 22, I thought I was such a good writer. And maybe I had a little something, but I was not such a good writer. And I was fortunate enough to, work in some newsrooms that were blessed with very talented and very patient editors who showed me in a constructive way that maybe I wasn't quite the writer that I thought I was. For me, the thing, because we don't currently do a lot of video or audio, because we're smaller newsrooms, in a daily news cycle, we don't necessarily have the same breadth of resources to take that 22-year-old S-hot, kid and sort of bring them along. We try, but realistically, we don't have the same depth of talent. So And I guess I also wonder, when I was a kid, I won't tell you how long ago it was, right? But we were getting 2 or 3 newspapers in the house. I was reading those newspapers. You kind of learn a little bit about writing, about news writing, and about the structure of a news story by osmosis. And I know that kids these days aren't necessarily getting that. So I have some questions about how the craft and those fundamental skills are working at the student level. But I'm very inspired to hear what our friend from Fanshawe says, and if there's ever anything that I or anybody else at the Logic, and I'm sure I speak for my colleagues on stage, if there's ever anything we can do to help you at Fanshawe, to help you at any other J school, or to help any student in the room, come find us after this, or find us on one of those social media platforms or whatever. I'm sure we'd be pleased to hear from you.
Jeff, Camille, Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.